more people get displaced, to use your terminology, from the manufacturing floor by those robots that were welding and things.
Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode of the AIM Media House podcast Simulated Reality. Today we have with us the Chief Technology Officer at Paradigm, Jason Cooper. Hi Jason, welcome. How are you today?
Hi, Kashyap. Good. How are you? We're on the eve of Halloween here in the United States, so that's always an interesting time, right? Children ringing doorbells and asking for candy. I don't think artificial intelligence has yet reached the realm of how it might affect Halloween, but I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
It's an area full of potential. If we are to use AI to make a haunted house or probably, design a costume.
Sure, or
Yeah.
even a metaverse game, right?
Oh, yeah.
That might have a
That,
Halloween theme. Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be fun. And I think we are going to talk about a similar topic, although it's not related to trick or treats or haunted houses. We want to kind of see AI's impact on technology teams today, right?
Yes.
As we start this conversation, right, Jason, I just wanted to lay the foundation for the audience, right? I wanted to understand, you have been in the industry for so long now. Usually, technologists build applications for other areas a lot, but nowadays there are a lot of applications where technology, especially in the context of AI, is impacting a lot in a lot of ways on AI technology teams themselves, tech stacks, business teams who work very closely with technologists. How have you seen this evolution over a period of time? And my question is also in terms of, does it always help, or do you sometimes feel that it is an unnecessary intrusion into the day-to-day thing? What has your experience been? And then maybe we can slowly go into AI and
Sure.
understand what is your experience.
No, happy to, think about this. So I'll answer in the context of today, and then we'll take a little ride in the Wayback Machine, and we'll talk about how this evolved over time. But I really do believe that, artificial intelligence is reshaping how businesses operate and collaborate today, like full stop. Everyone's talking about it. We've had three really distinct waves over the, evolution of artificial intelligence globally. I personally started, doing artificial intelligence in healthcare in the early 90s, and then later in the late 90s, first with computational lung modeling at the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. We were trying to predict when coal miners might be showing signs and symptoms of black lung, right? And then later to predict cholesterol management in adults, meaning, would it be better for you to use medication therapy, or would it be better for you to use diet therapy and cholesterol? Now, fundamentally, Kashyap, what I feel we're dealing with is a bit of a human education and a human trust problem, right? So if I go back to the early and mid 90s, healthcare professionals weren't yet ready to accept machines helping them make smarter decisions, right? We didn't have the trust factor. We didn't have a lot of the ethical practices and principles that we have today. But more importantly, really good decisions could still be made by humans based on the knowledge that we had at date. Now, in healthcare, at least, what we know now today is that so much new knowledge is produced on a global basis every day that if a physician, as an example, wants to practice at the top of their license, meaning utilizing every bit of knowledge they have to make the best decisions possible for a patient, they would have to read something like 16 to 18 hours every day. That's impossible. I mean, how do you do that and, right, take care of your patients, take care of your family, and take care of yourself? And so what most of us have realized is we have to have machines help us make, better decisions. And, so part of that trust and understanding ethical principles has really guided the evolution, I believe, of artificial intelligence.
Definitely. And with regards to some of the technology teams that today exist, right? And now that we have kind of set the context on how technology has impacted various areas, you have led many technology teams over the period of time. Today, you're the CTO, and you have a very broad overview of it. What is the impact of intelligent technology on how teams interact with each other. And I think that is very important to understand. I want to kind of understand through examples, if you can, help me with a few examples as to what it was before and then what it was after for these technology teams, so that the entire stack comes together and technology makes it more efficient, or sometimes not.
Sure. No, happy to help with that. So, as the chief technology officer at Paradigm, I'm really privileged to work with a very, very great group of leaders, and as part of that, I have not only technology but also data and analytics. And our group is actually called Technology, Data, and Analytics, purposefully put in that order because technology enables the data capturing that's important to then enable the analytics that drives data-driven decisions, right? And so if we focus on the left-hand side of that first, which is the technological side, I think about things like automation and efficiency, right? AI can really help those in industry today streamline a lot of the repetitive tasks that we have to do. And that frees up resources and employees to focus on more strategic, creative, and complex work. So, as an example, if we can automate problem solving for a call center, or we can automate the reading of medical records to extract and understand those important things that are in that, then we can spend more time developing applications or enhancing applications that bring, a lot more business value. This crosses over, into what I would call interdisciplinary collaboration, right? I mean, artificial intelligence really requires cross-functional collaboration between data scientists and engineers, domain experts, and all the business leaders that then help us develop and implement the AI solutions. And the reason that I'm sort of tying that to the whole automation and efficiency component is it's not simply a technology team's remit to go and decide what to focus AI on, right? That's actually an organizational and an enterprise conversation where I'm oversimplifying, but imagine if we created a 2x2 grid that had on one axis how complex the business problem was that you're trying to solve with artificial intelligence, and the other axis was the business value that you're trying to accrue from it, right? And you have conversations with your business stakeholders and you start to plot different problems that you need to solve with how much value can be derived from it and the complexity of the technological and analytical solution that you need to create through AI. And then you might decide, wow, there's this cluster of really cool ideas that are not that complex, but do require AI, but also would generate high orders of business value, whether that's in better healthcare outcomes or reduced operating expense, therefore efficiency, right? And those things. And that's where you focus your efforts. But that's a conversation that technologists have with analytic partners as well as your business leaders to come at that. So my point is, AI has become a very interdisciplinary conversation to arrive at the things you want to focus at. Now, the other thing I would mention on this topic is AI is just one tool in our toolkit. If I envision a carpenter's tool belt, right? We bring out a hammer when we need a hammer, and we bring out a screwdriver when we need a screwdriver. Some problems don't require AI. And so it's also really important that we have the subject matter expertise within our teams to understand when to deploy AI to solve a problem and when to say, hey, standard statistics or epidemiology or other analytical approaches will work just fine. And we don't need to spend the time and effort to do an AI solution for this business problem. Yeah.
Two things stick out to me in your answer, and they're very interesting points that you make. The first one, you said it frees up resources in a lot of ways, right? Automation frees up a lot of resources to do more intelligent work. One of the things, right, and during when AI was becoming a buzz a decade long, right, everybody was talking about automation. And at that time, I have also, seen the robotics industry very closely. There were a lot of studies that showed that automation, in fact, creates more jobs because they free up resources to create more jobs. But in today's world, and this question is perfect to answer for a CTO of Paradigm who works for the workers' compensation management, right? in today's world, when there is an intelligent automation, it can displace. When you talk about free up resources, it can free up jobs as well. It can reduce jobs as well, right? Is that something that you're worried about as a leader, as an industry leader who's building technology, or do you see something as AI or any kind of tool will always be an enabler? It will not displace human beings, because there are fears with intelligent automation. It can displace jobs. So, what is your opinion on in terms of this entire tech team dynamic where we might we replace the technologist itself, like in that case?
Yeah, so I mean, I have multiple ways to think about this. Let's take our Wayback Machine again and think about a historical example. This was really a concern in car manufacturing back in the day when robots started to replace individuals to do certain parts of the manufacturing process, right? Whether it was spot welding or other component assembly or things of that nature. But what we learned were a few things. One, in certain instances, machines were more efficient and faster at humans in doing those things. Two, highly repeatable and therefore higher accuracy and less error prone. Also, you didn't have to worry about injuries and other things that you might be concerned about, right? And so, however, what came to pass, though, was not an actual overall job reduction. Yes, did more people get displaced, to use your terminology, from the manufacturing floor by those robots that were welding and things? Yes. But guess what, Kashyap? We needed more knowledge workers because someone needed to build those robots and install them and maintain them. And also, someone needed to program them, because cars change every year. It isn't like these robots were just creating the same car for a decade. There had to be a lot of changes. And so now I fast forward to today and your point about automation and efficiency. And I've actually had this question in a few different conferences and other venues where I've spoken about artificial intelligence. And the questions to some pointed degree comes up and it says, is AI going to take my job? And my answer is artificial intelligence will not take your job. However, someone that understands artificial intelligence, and more importantly, someone that understands how to leverage artificial intelligence for the benefit of their business may in fact take your job, right? So this really becomes an opportunity for us to rapidly advance and sort of adapt to artificial intelligence. It also gives us a chance to upskill and reskill our teams in the way that they think about and approach problem solving. I also think about the way that we also began to do automation in the past was around self-service. And if you remember, not just, 7-10 years ago, data visualization was a really huge thing. Oh, I can take a huge workload off of my analytics team by allowing the business to probe and ask questions themselves, right? Well, we've taken that a step further with things like large language models and ChatGPT and OpenAI and things of that nature, where we've placed new self-service tools in our business stakeholders' hands so that they can ask more complex questions and get answers. And what does that allow our analytics and other scientists and technologists in our organization to do? Focus on more complex tasks and focus on innovating and thinking about the business problems of tomorrow, where yesterday they were solving those more rote tasks that we were unable to create self-service for our business stakeholders. So this is a secondary evolution, in my opinion, of data visualization and dashboarding and things of that nature. And now we're moving into, asking questions and probing our data using large language models. We've even moved to the place where we're optimizing the way our data science teams operate by saying, this is a problem that I have, and these are the data sets that I'm working against. What neural network or, support vector machine or Cahonan map or pick your methodology, what would you suggest? And before you know it, we don't have to go and attempt 100 or 200 different models. The artificial intelligence itself recommends, based on the data set type and the problem we're trying to solve, we might want to try these 5 or 6. And so it's actually allowing us also speed to answer, like allowing us faster resolution of problems and getting to business solutions that much quicker. So again, I don't see an immediate displacement as much as you're upskilling and reskilling teams on these new, capabilities and assets that you have at your disposal. And so again, I don't think AI takes someone's job. I just think someone that knows, understands, and can leverage AI take someone's job.
Yes, which is the adoption aspect of it. And I want to commit to it later. One of the things that struck to me in your previous answer is that you said it's very important to know when to not use AI,
Yeah.
especially this thing. And that is a very crucial aspect, right? As intelligent automation through the likes of technologies like AI automate tech teams and businesses, sometimes these technologies become a more hindrance rather than a solution, right? So let me give you an example of where this comes to my mind. Sometimes as companies grow, we set a lot of processes. And when we set processes, right, processes is a part of operations, not technology. But when we set too many processes, the processes in fact drag you down rather than improving the efficiency. So in hindsight, you're kind of losing more time or resources than this thing. When have you seen these kind of examples in AI driven automation of tech teams? And when should you avoid it? In a broader context, what are the parameters that you would put to avoid it?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, not every problem requires artificial intelligence, right? And secondarily, just because you can do AI doesn't mean you should, right? And part of your business process decision making, that interdisciplinary collaboration that I mentioned earlier, should be looking at efficiency and saying, we could do this with artificial intelligence. It'd actually take us longer to create the models and deploy them than it actually would to solve this using something else, right? Like some smart ETL process, or some, other way to automate things. And so I can think of things where in the healthcare world, we just need a really good epidemiological approach, as an example, like a retrospective match case control study, or we want to design a prospective randomized trial. That doesn't require an AI solution. And as a matter of fact, introducing artificial intelligence may in fact complicate matters, especially when I don't think that in the majority, and I'm sure that there are centers of excellence, whether it's, Duke University or Stanford or Johns Hopkins or others, and I'm only speaking in the US framework, right? But typically in healthcare, when you go about doing clinical trials, whether it's for pharmaceutical options or for healthcare treatment, you have to go in front of something that's called an IRB, an institutional review board. And IRBs aren't always traditionally well-versed in artificial intelligence. So it may take you longer to get approval of a study because you're dealing with a body of professionals that first need to be educated on what it is, rather than going back and using standard statistical and epidemiological methods to solve a problem that you have that actually in the beginning doesn't require artificial intelligence anyway. So one. Two, you really have to be careful about how you train models, because and I know this wasn't the root of your problem, but it gets to inefficiency, because if you come out with the wrong business solution, then you have to go back to point zero and start all over again, and therefore it is inefficient. And so I promise I have a point here, which is the data that you train your models on, you have to think about potential biases that you're inserting, right? So I'm not going to get political or anything else, but just to give some examples, I think that are important outside of healthcare. If I have a data set and all I train that data set on are Republican viewpoints or Democratic viewpoints or independent viewpoints, or if I have a data set and all I train it on is the Southwest region or the Northeast region, the thing most of us are trying to do, not always, because there are these rare special circumstances that require highly fitted artificial intelligence models. But in general, like large language models, what we're meaning to do is generalize. And in healthcare specifically, if you're not really critically thinking about the data sets that you're training your models on, you can lose generalization and therefore lose the ability to apply your models to both underserved and underrepresented populations. And then what you've done is you've actually inserted bias in your business decision making, because the data that you trained your models on was fundamentally biased to begin with, right? And my point there is, then if you go down to deployment and you realize, uh-oh, I used AI to solve a problem, my underlying data was biased to begin with, now I have to start all over again. Perhaps if you had simply started with much easier mathematical models or statistic models or epidemiologic methods, you wouldn't have gone down that path, and you wouldn't have inserted that underlying data bias to begin with. And so I think it's a really, really important thing that when you make these grids of business value versus analytical complexity, then you start to look at what are the problems within that grid of business value and complexity that can be solved with AI, and only those that, one, really and truly require artificial intelligence, but secondarily have robust data sets that either can be highly specialized or generalized to be utilized in such a way that don't unethically insert bias into your business answers. Those are the things that you go after. Because if you do it any other way, you're actually going to have to retreat and start all over again. And therefore, you've inserted inefficiency into your business process.
Correct. So I think there is a technology side to it when you decide to answer it, and then there is a social side to it as well, which is,
That's right.
and both are important to consider when not to use.
Socioeconomic side as well as a psychosocial side, right? Like the human aspect of this, especially in healthcare, when we're dealing with people and caregivers and a caregiving network, are so important. You know, that's actually one impact that we haven't talked about, which I think artificial holds a lot of promise in enhancing patient experience. You know, artificial intelligence can help personalize patient experiences and interactions, and that improves both their satisfaction of the services that you're providing, as well as the outcomes that they get as well. You know, if you think about how in our day-to-day interactions, we're interacting with Alexa or Siri or some other, AI agent on our behalf, we can do that in healthcare as well to the betterment of our patients. Or we use AI to do those same type of things for care teams. One example I can give in my organization is we have a new robust product that we're offering for musculoskeletal conditions, right? So you might have issues with your knee or your shoulder or your back, and you need either a surgical or a non-surgical intervention. And part of a care team's decision-making process is, one, to understand the complexity of what you're presenting so that they can help guide decision-making towards a surgical or non-surgical event, but also to understand complexity and comorbidity factors and psychosocial factors and socioeconomic factors. And there's so much data there that's both in an organization's data sets like ours, but also publicly available, or that the individual patient might self-report to you that you never would have thought to include in a model that helps you triage where an individual needs to be, right? High risk, medium risk, low risk, and understanding that and embedding it in your care models so that your care team most efficiently can care for that patient. That too leads to a much better patient experience. And we're doing that in our musculoskeletal program. Yeah. Just as a real world example.
No, I think that really helps in a lot of ways, right? And now that we've addressed the idea of when to adopt and when not to adopt, the other problem that we're facing nowadays, especially in technology teams, is the adoption itself. And its challenges do not pertain only to the ability of the technology teams, but also other considerations which are there, right? The security aspect of it, or the privacy aspect of the data itself, external threats, and these kind of things, right? What is your take on some of how to overcome some of these challenges and improve adoption when it actually makes sense? Like, so for now, we've seen where it should not be, but in the areas where it should be, so there are some challenges. And how are you tackling it, probably, or what are some of the real world examples in which these challenges have been overcome successfully?
Sure. Yeah, Kashyap, really what you're getting at to some degree is DevOps and model ops, right? Development
Okay.
operations and model operations. So in healthcare, we would call this bench to bedside. And what I mean by that is how do you take your R&D efforts, your research and development efforts, and then move those to where you can rapidly deploy them at the bedside, or in this case, in the real world, instance. And that's both on the efficiency of how you develop. And this is an example of fail fast and learn fast. And what I mean by that is the test and learn cycles that you do in AI modeling need to be very rapid, agile, and iterative. And once you find something that works, you have to understand how to develop and deploy it and model it, right? The other reality is that in AI, we have both supervised and unsupervised learning, right? And supervised learning requires human intervention. And part of the problem we just discussed earlier, the underlying bias that data can bring with it into modeling and things of that nature. The other bias actually is human curation. So, supervised models that require tagging of elements for image recognition, as an example, or other things in AI, you have to think about that human curation bias as you think about moving from development to model operations. The other thing about the dichotomy of supervised and unsupervised learning is how often does your data change such that your models need to be updated? And there's no one size fits all answer, right? So, some models, the data changes on a daily basis. I think of the stock market and trading and things of that nature. And the financial and the macroeconomic conditions can change overnight. You may need to be training your models continuously, right? Whereas in other instances, whether it's, highly rare but catastrophic injuries, you may only need to retrain your models monthly or quarterly. And so understanding, how much your data changes to then drive the learning cycles, therefore the development and model operations of your artificial intelligence solutions is really, really important. And again, not one size fits all, and certainly not the case in healthcare, because you have very prevalent events like cardiovascular disease and diabetes, and models like that not only have large populations to work with, but also the data is relatively known that only if a new treatment or a new medication comes out might you start to have the need to retrain. But on more rare events or things that have a very low in size, not a high frequency, right? That's when you need to accrue more data and more treatment exposure, if you will, to then know better when to, optimize your models. So understanding that life cycle from R&D to development to then operational deployment and how much you need to retrain your models is really important. Now, if we go to the full version of unsupervised learning, one would assume that the models themselves will understand that data latency and that data frequency problem and be able to train themselves. But I would say that human supervision is still really important, because outliers and edge cases and other things can still insert really weird error parameters in models. And so even if you have unsupervised learning and you feel like your models are on a really good cadence, you still should have some type of a manual review cycle where you bring data scientists together to understand and review model outputs to best guide things and at least have a quality check for, what is and is not working. But that life cycle of deployment of artificial intelligence solutions, I feel like is still maturing, to be quite honest.
Okay. On that note, this was a fantastic conversation, Jason. I really enjoyed it. I think we touched upon everything, right from how technology started impacting, businesses and tech teams, to kind of what it is today, when it should be done, not done, the adoption of it, how to improve it, and overall kind of address the issue. Any closing thoughts on the entire conversation?
No, Kashyap, first of all, I really appreciate the time with you and AIM, inviting me to have this conversation and this podcast. And I simply would reiterate that artificial intelligence is going to continue to reshape how businesses operate and collaborate with each other. And we need to embrace that interdisciplinary nature of that collaboration. It's not just a technology, a data, or an analytics conversation. It is full stop a business discussion. and understanding, how AI can bring value to the table at the right time and the right place is really important, but it's here to stay. And having someone that understands artificial intelligence and how to leverage it, I think is really critical for organizational maturity.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jason, for your time.
Thank you.